Good morning and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining me. Take a look at AutoCAD Civil 3D and a civil lobotomy for points. We're going to be taking a look at the jump for AutoCAD Civil 3D, what it is, how it works, and how it helps you deal with this totally different thing of points inside of AutoCAD Civil 3D and getting out the data. So we'll spend a good amount of time in Civil 3D and a little bit in PowerPoint as we get rolling here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tench Tillman. I'm the president of More Competency. And one of the things that we advocate is, hey, you employ the jump. It works on a fairly simple idea. Don't do all the work and get some work done instead of spending all your time messing with all the weeds that are inside of Civil 3D. We have a whole range of product to help you do that, from Instant Basic, which is our basic seat product. It's inexpensive, it's faster, it works, plots right out of the box, and does the job. The Jump Kit for AutoCAD Civil 3D, which adds thousands, literally, of standardized style support, all named the same, all that work the same, all that actually work, actually go through QA for each and every release of Civil 3D, and allows you to produce customized templates faster from a whole range of parts. And we have parts libraries like the symbol set for AutoCAD Civil 3D, which includes in-depth graphic support and symbol support for the NCS 4.0. Pretty much that does 502, by the way. A blocks only product, so if you have people working in map and you want to use the same kind of symbols and all that stuff that are all NCS compliant with a lot of variety, that also is something that you can get from us. And we wrapper all that stuff and access, download stuff, all that stuff into a product called Jumpstart Services, which allows you to have access to all this in multiple releases, and we do indeed support multiple releases of Civil 3D. The key issue about Instant on Basic is it works on the concept that you're going to work the same in all your projects, and then for those projects intelligently publish on demand. And they are two different and distinct processes. One of the things that LDT and our history of computer-aided drafting, so to speak, has brought to us is that the drawings that we actually do the work in are what we actually are producing. That is not necessarily true. And one of the key differences between model-based software like Civil 3D and AutoCAD LDT and the way AutoCAD works all by itself without any real in-depth objects is this idea of publishing being something else than how you work. So points export, or as we call it, the civil lobotomy, is a great example of that. So all our products have this idea that your productivity is built in right away. We're, just saying, hey, the national CAD standards, whether they're not perfect or not, they do the job. You don't got to worry about a lot of stuff when new releases come out, new service packs come out. The stuff actually runs and keeps working. And you do have this idea of lots of parts, a complete structure, and actually a process, and a whole set of processes, in fact, that actually systematically work to make Civil 3D productive, release after release, upgrade after upgrade, without pulling your hair out. And all that just costs you pennies a day per seat. Not a big deal. So if you want to talk to us about that, you can always call us at 1-800-584-1506. A couple of email addresses there. And no further ado, let's get on to point exporting and talk about point features in AutoCAD Civil 3D. So here's what our goals are. And we got to confine them because we could go all over the place here. We could spend 4 hours just talking about the intricacies of the point feature and point label features in Civil 3D. And there's lots of nuance in here. This is actually one of the more complicated things inside Civil 3D, not because it's complicated, but because our expectations of what it's supposed to do and what a point is are so different from the way Civil 3D handles things. If we have an AutoCAD viewpoint and we've been using Land Desktop for a long time and think of things in a certain way, that really gets in the way when we talk about point features, because we're using the same names and the same language to talk about something that is at all the same, not even close to the same. So we'll talk about some methods for getting the data out. And the key issue there is you really got to give people what they need. This is actually harder to do than we think about it, because they have an expectation of what they always got before, and is that going to fit the bill? So when we're talking about exporting point features, what do they expect? Well, it used to look like this all the time, and it was an attributed block, and it behaved that way, and that's what I got all the time. Now they're going to get something different from you, or maybe they're going to get exactly that, because that's ridiculously simple at one level out of Civil 3D. So the key issue here is you got to think of this like you're a director of a movie. You got to produce exactly what they need, and that's not necessarily what they got before. So a little bit of excitement is involved, right? And the key issues here are understanding how point groups, description keys, the survey database, and all those things can help you. Those tools and processes in Civil 3D can allow you to massage, produce exactly what you need. So really, you know, most of the time where people have issues here is, I want a drawing that consists of point data that looks like LDT. Maybe you are a firm employing Civil 3D, and the firm you work with, or another office you work with, still uses Land Desktop and wants all the stuff looking like Land Desktop. That's actually pretty easy in Civil 3D. You got a couple of things you got to massage, but not too difficult to actually do. And if you think about it, actually, if you can give them the data, that's more than enough in most cases. So you need to think about what you're actually doing, but we're going to talk about, you know, the export process. Okay. So one of the key issues, and I always got to bring this up, sorry, you know, kind of gets befuddling, is we have this idea of that because we had this attributed block, or points database in LDT, that things should work like that. This thing we see on the screen should behave like an LDT point. And that simply is not true. So I always ask the question, is there such a thing as a point in AutoCAD Civil 3D? And actually, definitively, the answer is no. There is no such thing as a point in AutoCAD Civil 3D. We have things that look like them, but in AutoCAD Civil 3D, we're going to find out right away that all the points are always collected. That means that whenever you have even a single point, it is a member of this thing called the point group. And that is the way they are defined. There's no way around that. This is the way that the data object model works, and it's a very good way that it works. But this idea that there is this singular thing that we see on the screen that is a point is simply untrue. I could also talk about things like points in a surface, or points in the surface, COGO points, or survey points, COGO points, or, well, there are actually lots and lots and lots of kinds of things that we refer to as points. And that's not just semantic language. They are actually different things inside of Civil 3D. So a survey point, a point in the survey database, while it may show up on your screen, isn't a COGO point. And a COGO point certainly isn't a surface point, though they may all be talking to one another. So key issue here is Civil 3D is data centric. What you see on your screen is just the output of a whole bunch of style processes working to show you something that looks like something on your screen. The data is the underlying thing that is most important in Civil 3D, and keeping that, managing that, and handling that is very different than an old AutoCAD-based piece of software like Eagle Point, or actually some things that actually run inside Civil 3D now, like Carlson. The point is an individual thing. Where inside Civil 3D, it's really data being shown as something on your screen. This is mind-numbing, okay, and frustrating, as we've all probably experienced. I have a simple little drawing. It's actually set up in a coordinate system, happens to be running an IOB-based, slightly tweaked version of a template. And we can get points in here lots of ways. And that, in fact, is, one of the befuddling things. If I go up here and do the classic Civil 3D thing, it's been around for a long time, go point creation tools, bring out the layout toolbar, import here, and I can import a CSV file in tons and tons of formats, in fact, almost any kind of format you want, and that will get me Kogo points. Those are not the same as survey points. We're going to employ survey here. Why am I employing survey and advocate it for a publishing environment? One, while adding a little bit of complexity to the problem, it also gives you the opportunity to get just what you want when you want it really quickly into the drawing space so you can publish it. And the process for exporting is a little bit detailed. I'm going to just hop over to IE for a second. And when we talk about export, a couple of big things. This is just a blog post, right? Okay, called Dumb It Down from CAD to Civil 3D. So you can go to cadpilot.com and search for point export. We'll see. And this will be one of the reference blog posts. A couple of things in terms of deciding what those people need. One of your best shots, in fact, with the least amount of work, the thing you can produce is a picture of your points. And in many cases, going out to an architect, somebody else is going to use it as a background. That may be your best shot. They can, if you do a DWF, which I'd probably advocate over using a PDF image, since now you have getting into the right place and scaling it properly and all those things. A DWF preserves all that, and it's real vector data. And if you want, you can give them layer control. So by employing layer control, they can get rid of the noise out of your points, so to speak, in terms of labels and all that sort of stuff. They can turn it on and off, and it plots just fine. It works as a reference, right, in many, many applications, including Revit. Okay, so DWF is, I believe, one of your best shots. It's also one of, in terms of getting your own projects out the door, one of the best ways to get the existing data published into your finished project. Because you can simply use DWFs, which are really light, they're really small, and don't contain, for example, all the service data having to be processed. Right? You can actually produce exactly what you want, whether it's in monochrome or color, right? And get that DWF as an image, right, in your final finished plan sets. And you can control, the quality of it at acceptable levels inside Civil 3D, and it works like a charm. The other way to do this is to employ proxy graphics, which are effectively whatever the last picture was of this drawing whether or not you actually have Civil 3D or not. If you turn it on when you save it and you save your model space configuration, AutoCAD will save it as long as you don't try to change it. So the key issue here is make those drawings read-only, and that proxy graphic image, including access to layers and all that sort of stuff, will show up in regular generic AutoCAD drawings in the same AutoCAD drawing file format with each cycle. So that means for releases, anybody in 10, 11, and 12, it will actually print as long as they don't try to touch it. So one of the great things, if they try to open it in edit mode, it's going to blow up your proxy graphic image and end of issue. So, however, many end users don't understand, the rules around proxy graphics and how it works at all. So you got to do a little education and be prepared to educate your customer, so to speak, so that they don't mess it up. And sometimes that's like, this is a read-only drawing, why? Because. And do not try to open this drawing. And you can reference it, but don't open it. Okay? Otherwise, you're going to trash it. And then when it's trashed, they can't see anything, and, Civil 3D objects all try to fire off, and they don't have that stuff. You can also employ Civil 3D object enablers. AutoCAD Autodesk is very good about tossing them out every single release, and you can install them, but one of the key issues here is that they only work for a single version, and you can only install one for all of Civil 3D on one machine somewhere. So if they are somebody who deals with multiple clients, the odds of that actually working, right, are pretty small, meaning they may be an architect working with 2 or 3 engineers using different versions of Civil 3D, and this will make life absolutely miserable for them. So most people aren't too successful about that. And then there is LandXML file formats, like point file formats, et cetera, which are actually one of the best ways to give them the stuff if they have some way to display the data the way they want it. And there are a bunch of ways you can do that too. So just want to point out that DWIF is probably your best shot, and don't even go through this process because the DWIF will get them pretty much what they want most of the time. But if they got to get down to the data, okay, now you got some different issues, but they may demand, or your contract to deliver may demand you produce an AutoCAD deliverable piece of AutoCAD drawing. So if you can avoid that at all costs, do it. I also got another little comment here. So you're working with people and things are going back and forth. Whatever you send them, you are never going to take back. So if you export a digital drawing, like the AutoCAD drawing we may produce here, right, that's the last time you're ever going to see it. If it's going out to somebody, it is never coming back. If they send it back and ask for changes, you tell them we are simply never going to take it back. We're going to throw it away. All you need to send me are a layer with markups, right? Or a DWIF with markups. Do not send me my data back. I will not open the drawing. And if you do that, you will never have the problem of, who did what when? And it's about the only way you can avoid this problem. Okay, and everybody says, well, there's ways to massage around that, and there are. If you work very closely with another office, for example, yeah, you may be able to exchange the drawings, but you will still end up with who did what when problems if you do not obey the simple rule. Okay, simple truth here. If you must produce editable content, you will make multiple export drawings, process each of them, and combine them into one dumb AutoCAD DWG file. There is no other way to do this inside Civil 3D, and may never be a way other than this to do this. So first thing is, you're not making one drawing. There is no hit the magic button going to happen for Civil 3D features being stupided down into AutoCAD format. They can make it simpler, make it faster, but the more they do that, the more complex the resultant AutoCAD file is, and the less likely they're going to be able to edit it without a whole bunch of pre-editing. So one of the key tricks here is that you're going to produce multiple export drawings. You're going to process them. Really simple process, takes almost no time at all, right? Clean them all up, right? And then put them all back together to make the one dumb file. Okay, so inside Civil 3D, let's get to some data. A couple of things. We got a drawing. It is in a coordinate system. We did that, over in the settings tab. Edit drawing seconds, happens to be the California state plane because that's where this project is. Now, if you don't want to ship the coordinate information, you can do that to them. But check, make sure. Other issues, since we're going to be working inside a survey here and employing a survey database to barf what we need onto the screen and get it in the format that we want. Our survey database better be linked up properly with our drawing. Or, for example, I need to take my survey database, which was all gathered in Imperial, and translate it for somebody into UTM. So my drawing can be in, a transverse Mercator coordinate system, but my survey database can all be in that 83 Imperial. Okay, so that can do some really cool things. So I can actually produce content via this method in a whole different bunch of context to a whole bunch of different customers. So that's one of the goals here, is that we want to be able to do this on a customer basis. Once again, we're going to work the same, and then we're going to publish to them exactly what they want. And this is one of the great, powerful things about Civil 3D. Now, to do that, we need a survey database. So we're going to turn on the survey tab here. And a couple of things they don't tell you. They tell you somewhere buried away in the documentation, but survey has its own profile and its own working location, if you want that to be the case, or you can make it a mess. So, we're running a profile in here, and, we went to the options bar, and we're running some sort of a profile here. And the profile I'm running happens to just change file locations for resources to a project location. My classic, right? So I got a survey databases, and my survey databases are located somewhere. This need not be the same place I put my data shortcuts. It may not even be in my own project or in a project location at all. So you get the flexibility, but therefore you get the madness. So you need to check some things. Where is my current working folder? I happen to be working in my project, and I happen to be working in existing conditions, and down here I'm working in my existing survey. Okay, that is not exposing all my survey data up at the root of my project, right, to all my design folks. So it's squirreled away in a location. They got to know how to get to it. Okay, I may therefore have a survey database private in that sort of a folder with some network restrictions so the design people can't get in there, but only the survey people can. And then I can have a different survey folder uphill where I publish, what is the approved stuff. So survey gives you a lot of flexibility there. The other key issue is this little button right here. And our survey user settings are savable, and they are effectively a profile for how survey works. And therefore, they control a whole bunch of where survey is looking for stuff, all kinds of things. I want to use something like Notepad++ or something else, some other better ASCII editor than raw Notepad, right? Which is a good idea, by the way. Go out and find one or two. Notepad+, Notepad++, Notepad 2, all of those work much better than the raw notepad that ships with Windows in every release, and replace your ASCII editor. Notice a couple of things here. I'm leaving my database settings and my extended XML stuff pointing at the default install location. And then everything else, almost everything else, is pointed to a project, my current project location, and that is very important. So what I have is my line work code set and my figure prefix database and all those things happen to be pointed at specific things in specific locations. So one of the cool things here is you can import and export, right? So I can go up and, shift to the other project. This is my project one. Okay, so we're going to open it. We're just going to reset, and everything would be exactly what I had before. Okay, so if you don't save your settings, Survey saves them anyway, so you have current settings, and they may be all over the place. So that's one of the befuddling things about Survey, but once you get the idea of, oh, I save it like a profile, and every time I come in to Survey, right, I load it up. Okay, so I get consistent results. Otherwise, you won't, and things will drive you crazy. And I have a database. We're going to happen to open it for edit, but I could just do it read-only since I'm just at the publishing level. It's running off an imported event, so, right-click, I imported survey data. I can do this multiple times. I can import, by the way, all kinds of stuff, right, into a database. So we're going to go here, and I want to point out that you can do point files. So if your data is now in COCO points, you can export them out of a drawing, put them in a point file, and then load them into a survey database. And that is one of the best ways to get to this publishing loop from your finished design points and all those sorts of things, right? One of the slick things you can do is import a point file. Okay, but we're actually working from a classic FBK file, and you could re-import this thing. This is going to go back, re-look at the data reference. So this is actually pointing to a text file. And when we re-import, it will re-import it. So if we changed it and updated it, will it update it? Yes. Which will dramatically and can dramatically affect what your stuff is. So in Survey, this import event, right, is actually re-importable and reprocessable, and contains a bunch of stuff. It doesn't contain a lot of parcels or a lot of, there are definitely control points here. There's a couple of setups, not too many of them, and, we could root around in here, but we're not here to show off survey functionality. We're talking about export. So, let's, just insert some figures into our drawing. And these were all generated typical LDT, like the, figure prefix stuff went on. Okay, so we ran a figure prefix database, right? Here's the one we were working in. And, we can manage it. And, if name matches happen, things go to specific layers. Oops. So, and get specific styles. They could go to different layers, so a different figure prefix library is really easy to build, point to different layers, and make keys that do different things. Make figure prefixes that do different things. These are not keys, though they in some ways might be related to them at one level. We are also assigning styles. These are all classic jump styles, you will see, right? So there's an EOP, an EOS, a sidewalk style, et cetera, that put things on layers. So just like points come in, figures come in this way. I'm giving you the figures more to show, but one, if we wanted to export the figures now, right, file, export, not save as. Do not use save as AutoCAD drawing. So we want to export. Notice you can export to DGN. This actually works about as well as AutoCAD format. And you can go out to an AutoCAD format, and you can go out to your current format or even older formats. And if I export this drawing to, these are my figures, and I'm just going to call them figures. And I like to use this as an example, and it's going to grind away, and you will see pretty much a WBUC process happens, and some other things happen. And if we go out and open that file, and there's my AutoCAD drawing, and I'm opening this in Civil 3D, right? But there is no Civil 3D stuff left in here. And what you end up with is, what is this thing? So over in the Properties tab, right? Sorry. Okay, you end up with 3D lines. Okay, so your figures get smacked down, right, to the simplest of things, right? Let's pick another little chunk, and you'll see, once again, it's just a polyline or a line, right? Depending upon whether it had vertices. Notice this is a 3D polyline, that piece of figure, right? So based on definition, right, of the figure, most of the stuff will come out with line work. Some of the stuff will come out as 3D polylines. Depends how the figure style represents things and how the figure was edited, actually. So, but you get line work. And notice also line work goes on the layer that the figure style said to go on. So the end result is pretty reasonable and pretty easy to do. So you can take your figure prefix like date library, your figure prefix here, and determine exactly what your output is. And you could pick another one, right, before you put the figures in the drawing. A couple of little things, words of warning here. I'm going to take those. Remember, I'm in what drawing? Oh, I'm in that AutoCAD drawing. These are no longer figures, right? Okay, so we're going to just close that guy. And here are the figures inside my drawing. And because I'm smart at survey, I can, hey, remove the figures from the drawing since they are connected to the database. It knows where they are and what they are, and out they come. However, one would assume at this point that there's nothing in my drawing because I started with a drawing with nothing. And not true. And we're going to prove it to you. So we're going to look for this thing called parcels, right? So that's looks at the old drawing and says there's something in here, and I'm going to do a select all, and you'll see, all right, that my property result is I have 27 parcels. So because figures are related to parcel segments, in release 12, currently right now, it creates a parcel every time you drop in the figures, and it doesn't delete them. So as you get a drawing and you import figures, remember that you have these dead parcel blocks, these dead parcel things in your drawing. There's no way to really get rid of them. So, make sure you go back to a clean drawing. So, one of the easiest ways to do that, AutoCAD 101, we're going to do an undo. We're going to go back, and we're going to go back, yes, please, to the beginning of my drawing, which simply is set up, okay? Okay, and nothing in my drawing. So, is there anything in my drawing? Control A, right? Okay, and nothing in my drawing. So I'm back to nada, okay? Did that blow up anything else, like my coordinate system? Yes. Okay, so wanted to make sure you save your drawing and reopen it, right? How do we do that? coordinate system, setup code. We're in the United States. We happen to be inside California, and we're in that 83 US foot. Please apply that. Say okay. Okay, so I want to close and open here, right? Get my drawing set up, and this is an important little process, whether you deal with the figure issue or not, for your points as well. Okay, because you want to make sure that only what goes out is exactly what you said each and every time. So those undo backs, right, can save you a bunch of headaches for getting garbage in that you do not. Back to survey. Now we have a couple of decisions, and this is a key decision, and you need to think about it. You can change your mind, okay, but what scale, sort of, am I going to print things? Because when we go down to AutoCAD, a symbol is no longer resize. One of the cool things about Civil 3D is that our symbols resize. So, hey, let's just sort of the point. We're going to stick in the points, and we're going to insert all the survey points in this small little survey into a drawing, and some magic's going to happen somewhere, and stuff is going to show up and look like something. And actually, Civil 3D at this moment in time is lying to me. What I see on my screen may or may not have anything to do with what's real. Okay, because when I took my survey data, which is what we're holding in my database, which has got lots of data in it, okay, depending upon where it came from, okay, lots and lots of data, actually has setups in it and all that sort of stuff. Here we just got representation thrown onto the screen, and a couple of key issues here. I do now really have Civil 3D COGO points in my drawings, and they are represented currently as stuff on my screen. Looks like a bunch of X's to me, mostly, and a few little symbols stuck down in there. So one of the key issues is that you always got to update your point groups. Because as we said, when you make a point, this thing called the point right here, and I can zoom to that specific one. Okay, happens to be one of those setup points. Okay, ding 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 ding. Okay, I can zoom to that point. This point here is always a member of a point group, and what it looks like is controlled always in part by point group. Happens to be a member for sure of all points, so that's why there is an all points in every single Civil 3D drawing. They're always collected into point groups. You can, this thing called the point, Civil 3D does a bunch of things that make it look like this is an individual thing, the way it was an attributed block before. But if we look carefully at our property definition, right, you will see it is always a member of some, and it's always, this one happened to go through a description key process, okay, because we had a description key set, and that's very important, right? It has a full description and all those things, and those happen because we had a description key set. It has a label rotation and a marker rotation, but it is also a member of a point group. Its primary point group is this one. So the last place actually it resolved to is V control found points, and therefore what it looks like in part, right, is always controlled by that. So there is always a primary point group resolution to the data, and notice it's in the data tab. This is very important. This is not a thing separate from that primary point group. It is impossible for it to be. Okay, whether you like that or not, doesn't really matter. It's the way Civil 3D works. So now our points, so to speak, a whole bunch of them disappeared, and a bunch of them got symbols. And most of you have been around a while, so now we know that's all controlled by what description key set was applied, properties, and you'll see I have a bunch. And I already had a priority set, and I have something called blah, 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 blah. Point styles are applied, default the default label styles. So label styles are not defined at all in this key set, and they get, something called new descriptions. So they effectively translate that data. So let's take a look real briefly at this. The keys are very important since you can control almost everything about what things look like, whether it gets assigned to style or not. Okay, and right, whether it's generating line work, okay, and exactly what is said and what gets passed over in terms of its format. So how the raw gets translated, right, becomes here, what layers thing goes on. So you can take multiple description key sets and go to multiple different layer schemes, ones with symbol structures, right? You'll see many of these go to, if I sort this, you'll see some go to break lines, many go to nodes, some go to pavement points, some go to site structures, some go to utilities, major utility layers. So you got what you want to do, right, with the symbols, so to speak, or the point data, right? And your layer control completely can be controlled inside your description key. Okay, so having multiple description keys, that get you the symbols you want in the way you want, right, is one of the key export issues. Other issue here is that since it's Civil 3D, you got annotative scale. So, hey, if I'm going to plot at 20 scale, things will get smaller, except for my trees, which are actually dynamically scaled, right, to the tree size, right? Things get smaller or bigger. Okay, this affects both my labels and my symbols. So whenever I bring the points in, right, I can get my annotative scale set up nearly exactly the way I want. Now, in terms of position, got all the symbols I want, the way I want them. Okay, so this is the first drawing I need to produce. Now, I may want to look at this carefully in terms of massaging things. Okay, I have things like, classically using, these, FES blocks, right, to show driveway edges. They need to be scaled and rotated, and I can, in 12, I can scale and rotate those, and I could rotate them to the proper way, and maybe even scale them a little bit and get them tweaked out. Signs, same thing here. Maybe this one happened to be pointing in the wrong direction. I want to make sure it's pointed in the right direction. Okay, so you can individually massage this output out of survey. Now, each time you import and export, it's going to change that. So you need to think about how much work you want to do here and how much work you want to do in the export drawing. Really a question of how you want to divide that task out. Okay, and there are ways, right, to do things in mass. So, I can say select similar. Now, what gets selected when I do that select similar? Well, it happens to be all signs or all same way. Can I rotate them both? Oh yeah, so I can take the marker rotation here and take the marker rotation, figure out what my alignment is, slap into 45 degrees, right? And hey, cool. Okay. Okay. Well, that wasn't exactly right. I actually want them pointing this way, right? Okay. Well, no, actually, I want them pointed, back to 0. And back to 0, we'll put them no property set. And so for kinds of symbols, you can select them, make selection sets, and do those rotations really quickly, right, using property rather than manual rotation. Though sometimes manual rotation is the way you want to do it, and you can do it by individual point, and you can actually do it by point group. Okay, so we know that, here, all utility, right? We can select all the utility blocks in the drawing and align them. You could make a new point group that has utilities left, utilities right, as we did for curb marks, right? Curb edges and those sorts of things, so that we can put our labels on the lefts and the rights. So a detailed set of point groups, right, that do specific things and include specific things out of your standard data collection methods, right, can make things easy. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's look at the definition of this point group. We're actually using raw description matching, right? And we actually have an include list. So this one happens to employ even numbers one way, odd numbers another way. So we could actually figure that out. So the right ones are all even and the left ones are somewhere else. And one of the little tricks is to keep yourself, right, a description key definition, right, where you could paste the string in. And I actually advocate naming your point groups and those things and keep them in your project in a notepad-like file, right? Spreadsheet also works, right, where you keep the names of the point groups and what this raw description matching list is, so that you can make point groups on demand, publish them, right, and do that really quickly instead of trying to go through figuring it out each and every time. And the better and faster you get at that, the easier it is to do. Pretty easy. What do I need? I need the name of the point group and my raw description list. I will warn you that the paste that you can put into this box can only have 256 characters, so 255 actually, so watch it. Okay, so the size of that common denominator list can make things a lot easier. So given that I have that, now I can do things like labels and block rotations and those things really quickly. So if I want, we can do this for labels, but if I had a utilities left and a utilities right, okay, and built that into my collection method, right, or my import process, or what I did with, the description, okay, I can do an awful lot of things repetitively, quickly, in terms of changing those rotations and getting that all fixed up, right? Reduce as much as possible, right, the individual work that you have to do. So how do we get this drawing out? We're going out to 20 scale. Okay, and it's the same basic process. Export to an AutoCAD drawing. We're going to do it in the same format. And, we did figures, and we're just going to call this one symbols. And hit save. That was pretty easy. And took just a sec, and what do we got? We're going to open that guy, and that one was my symbols drawing, and open that, and where'd I get? Oh, my two signs only. Oh, so you got to make sure, hey, you had a selection set, and so you had a current last selection set, and that's what you got exported out. Ooh, oh, so what? What? So make sure you have no last selection set, right, before you create your export drawing. One of the little, why did it do that? Because you can actually export to a selection set, and it actually uses the last selection set. And that's what we selected last, so that's what we got. So, oh, maybe that helps you, maybe that doesn't, right? So we really don't want to keep this drawing. So, we mess things up, right? So your changes, no. Okay, so how do I get them all, right? Well, what do you want? Okay, well, we can make a selection set. Okay, now let's test that. And if we go and export to AutoCAD drawing, export to AutoCAD, and I rewrite my symbols drawing, hit save, right, and what do you know? So whatever's in your selection set currently, or the last selection set, gets exported. Let's open that drawing again. And we got a little bit of processing work to do on this guy. And give it a second to resolve, and you'll see you end up with a block reference on the right layer as determined by what? By the description key file. Okay, and it will be, layer sorted the right way, all those things, right? It actually gets XYZ, notice, right? So I don't want it to have disease. Okay, well, there is the flatten command. Okay, so you can select and flatten things, right? Okay, you can also take all the Z's, grab everything, take all the Z's, and make that Z position 0. Okay, and your point style actually controls that over in Civil 3D, whether it's, right, employing real Z's or not. Okay, so you can open a template that has all the point styles defined to use 2D, flat, be on 0, 0, be on a specific one if you want them all flattened that way, or you can post-process. Okay, so that's a bit of, that gets you your symbols out. So now we got the figures, and now we got the symbols out, okay, and they're in all the right location with the symbols I want. But wait a minute. I want little X's. We had a whole bunch of points. Okay, I saw a whole bunch of points, but not all of them get symbols. All right, so let's close this guy again. And in my drawing, I'm a whiz. Okay, so we're just dealing with the symbols here, and I really don't care about the other stuff. And I've got an all points group, and that will include everything. And I want little X's everywhere. So I'm going to temporarily, just for my export here, put all points at the top. Okay, and take a look at the properties of my all points group, and it's now using a relative point style. Okay, and what do I mean by that? Okay, so it's using relative to the screen. Okay, so that allows me to zoom in and always find points and do all that kind of cool stuff. Well, I really like a fixed style with a little cross, and we'll take a look at what that kind of looks like real briefly. And so that's using, a little teeny itty bitty cross, right, at a given scale. And we'll say, okay, that's really what I want to do. And we're going to apply that everywhere. And so now we'll end up with at all point locations. Okay. And I could do this by different description point groups, excuse me, right? I could define what those look like. So if I want little crosses somewhere, I want little X's, want little dots, want little circles. Once again, control by point group. Okay, best way to do it. Now I got all the stuff I want, right? Okay, and grab all that stuff. My Civil 3D is going to check out for a minute as I use a bunch of RAM up. Okay, and got all those guys. Now they all have all that stuff, right? Marker rotation, I'm at the right scale, got all that stuff, and export to an AutoCAD drawing into 10. And get my symbols out, drawing updated. Yes, please. And trust me, you get exact representation. But wait a minute, we better check. Okay, so we're now going to open that drawing, and we're going to open this guy again. And let's take a look at what those little X's look like. They show up on layers from where? Where layers come from? The description key set. Okay, and once again, it's a little teeny block, and notice, right, it has a name. Okay, notice it has it made up a name. Wait a minute, did it do that with these? Let's look at one of those. Yeah, so all the blocks end up inside blocks. This is to preserve the graphic relationship to the labels, which is what export does. So all these things end up being wrappered in another block. So anything in terms of any Civil 3D stuff that might have been around it, right, is all fixed to it. So if you did the labels and the symbols at the same in your drawing, they would all be wrappered in this little beast. And that's what the export process does to preserve their location, since the meaning, right, of what this little symbol looks like is pretty important. So one of the things you can do is clean your drawing up, is select all my block references in my drawing, okay, and include in the new selection set, and hit them with the explode button. So when you got what you want, blow them all up. Okay, and now we end up with where all these things end up. These are those little guys, right? Since they are pointing to a style, I wanted to point out, just become little lines, no symbols. So be careful of what you employ. The symbol, in fact, right, becomes the named block, right? Okay, referred to in the style after the explode process happens. Okay, so this will be actually a real block, right, if you do that. Okay, so if you want these little crosses to stay coherent, they got to reference a named block over. Okay, and we're going to save our little symbols drawing since we just want them slapped down. And notice that our little symbols here also went to 0, right? Stayed on the same layer, but become just 2 lines, right? At Z elevation, and that may not be what your customer expects. So that stuff is coming from where? From the point style. Okay, so let's save this symbols drawing and close it. Okay, and what do we mean by that? So these guys, we got to those by, it's in the point group, it's in the property of the point group. They're using a V-point cross style, and that actually uses a custom marker, which is really a PD mode. Okay, and how do you know that? Well, okay, go over the marker and it will tell you what the PD mode is it's using. Okay, so these are all done by numbers, right? Number lists. This is old AutoCAD stuff, been around for years and years and years and years, right? Okay, and notice in the summary, right, you can do a few other things with a marker that appear and don't appear, right? So pay attention, right? So here, instead of using a custom marker, you want a block, make a little block cross, right? And say, hey, I want them all to refer to dots, right? Or a small X or whatever, you want to call it. So we want to use a custom AutoCAD block in our definition, right? That does exactly what I want. Okay, we're going to leave those. So if you actually want them to be a block when they come out, then employ a style, right? Then employs one. Okay, so that after you explode, it'll end up on the right layer, right? Determined by the description key set, right? And your graphics will stay together. So we got our symbols all handled. Okay, so let's see. We really don't need these points anymore. Okay, so points. Let's remove them from the drawing. Yeah. Okay, so got rid of all of my points, and labels I may want to deal with by bringing them in and massaging the labels. So let's uh, let's see. Control A, wasn't that it? Does that leave any crud around? Nope. So nothing in my drawing. Okay, back to raw stuff. Um, Okay, so labels usually take, what do the symbols look like? All right, and what description keys do I want, and how do I want the labels positioned relative to symbol blocks and all those things. And let's squirt them back in just for a minute. So our description keys, right, work, and now I want some labels, and I control my labels, and oh, all right, better me, update this. Okay, and because all points is on top, I can control all the labels at once, which in many cases is exactly what you want. And so we say, okay, what I really want to do is use a stack label with elevation and description one over the other at a zero rotation, and notice, hey, it's possible to jump somewhere in the jump. These are not an IOB. Somewhere in the jump, we got all these ones with, certain rotations here. So I want ones elevation stacked, right, with description over the elevation, and hit apply. Okay, and say okay, and ooh, cool. Okay, so I got the description, and once again, by point group, I can sort this out, make this different, but I certainly like all those labels. Now, what I don't want is all the symbols. Okay, so I like that. That works good enough for my current project. Obviously, I can do lefts and rights and other things by point groups, right, without belaboring that fact. Right? But I certainly don't want the symbols. So how do I get rid of the symbols? Okay, well, that's ridiculously simple here, right? Okay, got to go over survey. Got to yank the points up. I can get it back anytime. And what I don't want temporarily, okay, so what I want over my settings for my description keys, right, is maybe I want one with continuous. Okay, this one passes the strings. Okay, we'll use this pass strings, and notice it applies no point styles. Okay, so we want that one to be on the top. Now we could have descriptions new, right? We could make one that's descriptions new. This one applies no point style, so I want that to be on the top. It is going to pass the description directly from the imported FPK file, right? No translation happened, all right? But we'll get the same basic thing. And now well, make sure, yeah, okay, pass strings, right, is at the top. So it's the first things, the first match. And notice I could do that selectively by editing the key stack, etc. Okay, I can also remove and delete temporarily out of this, right? The ones I want to make sure don't match. Okay, if I use stack logic in my key sets. We're hoping here that they do both. Okay, and they replace all of them, and all the keys are the same, so I won't get any symbols, right? And up back to the survey tab, and insert into my drawing. And I get scaled trees. That's right. My tree scaling is still in that description key set. Okay, but we could fix that later, right? And they get the little X's, but we really don't want those X's. So where did that come from? Point group. So better update, make sure, okay, nothing else happens. So for all the point groups, I certainly do not want anything. So please give me no point stop. Apply, say okay, and now I got all my labels, and they're doing the right thing in terms of what my label looks like. And we want to select all that stuff, and I don't have to select it if I had no selection set, but hey, I like to make sure that I'm getting what I want. And once again, everything in Civil 3D. All right, file, export to an AutoCAD drawing in the format I want it in. And what do you want to call this one? Oh, these will be point labels 01. Okay, and hit save. And writes all that stuff out, and hopefully we get what we expected. And we want, here's my points label drawing. And once again, we've learned that whenever export to export stuff, it makes those nifty little wrappers to hold the stuff together. Okay, and you'll see, okay, so you got all that. Okay, so do I want to leave them all held together or not? Okay, well, what the heck? What do we want to do? Oh, we need to select everything and this is also a good test, which is why I do this too and do it this way. Okay, I've got nothing but those block references in my drawing. I want to select them all. Okay, make sure I didn't pick up something bizarre from somewhere unseen. Okay, and I got all those guys, and we want to, of course, explode them. All right, and now what do I got? If I do a Control A, this fast way, grab everything in my drawing. Okay, I end up with all M text. Yay! Okay, all right, and notice they're all on one layer because that's what the description keys had said to do. Okay, so just to be clear where that came from. All right, and now I have all the components, and I've got all the drawings. I make my default drawing, and voila, stack them all together with insert explode. So, hey, we could put them all into this drawing just temporarily, right? Okay, what do we want? Okay, where am I saving those? Okay, saving them up to my publishing directory. Where the heck are my saving those survey? Okay, there they are, and we wanted that symbols drawing. Okay, think, and want to use a coordinate system because every time I had a coordinate system, and because I was using export too, it recognized the coordinate system, and I want to definitely make sure my explode box is on. And now I got my symbols, and now I simply one of my figures, and once again, please locate that way so it's all stitched back together, right? And now I have hit save, and I have an AutoCAD drawing with all of my figures, pure AutoCAD stuff, reasonable annotation, all at the right scale. And hey, do I want, once again, fixing things I would fix before I went out to AutoCAD, but if you want to off the rotation work and those sorts of things to someone else in the organization who's in Civil 3D skilled, you can do that. And this works for just about every single kind of Civil 3D thing there is in terms of processes. So exporting point data in Civil 3D and getting it out into AutoCAD. And notice we could have gone to any format. Actually, you can now save as back to other formats. By the way, little key, if you want to manufacture this kind of drawing and do as now as an export to DGN from here, from this drawing, that's also possible, and it will actually do a DGN reference that actually turns out pretty well and is pretty editable. So this process can be extended. Once again, good example of how Civil 3D data just becomes dumb CAD stuff, okay, without too much effort, just following a fairly simple process. The more structured you make this process, the faster it is to do. Once again, the key is producing template files that got all the point groups that you need. They got them tweaked the way you want them to be tweaked in terms of how the labels are arranged and what labels you have, what symbols are employed, etc. The more you work at producing just that template that takes your survey database and vomits it out in exactly the right way, that's where you get faster and faster, and that's where you get better and better and more consistent results with less man hours. So once again, you keep working the same, do things the same way, work on the publish loop separate from I'm making a drawing that does everything perfectly. It's the process that actually pays you the most time and saves you the most time in terms of Civil 3D.